Many people have problems with art and not with reality.
So why is art different?
It's pretty simple, right?
This is knowledge, this is thinking, this is thought.
Yeah, it does something strange with your head.
Welcome to the Undergang Armchair.
Bring it.
Welcome to the Undergang Armchair. My name is Ando. Well, gang, the holidays are here, Christmas is approaching, and people are stabbing each other in the neck at Art Basel, Miami. 'Tis the season. Well, actually, if you want to go see some art during the Christmas times here, be sure to go see the Yayoi Kusama show at Louisiana. It is really excellent and well worth the trip up there. But as a dose of calm energy and thoughtfulness to combat whatever crazy is nipping at your heels, we have Rune Bosse on the show today. It was actually super exciting to have him on because I just saw his work recently for the first time, printed in a new art magazine, no less, called AF Art, first edition, and I was immediately attracted to his work. And after thinking about it for a little while, I realized why that was. It has something to do with the honesty and earnestness that he exudes in his work. I had kind of a similar reaction to his work as I did to Felix Gonzales-Torres' work the first time I saw it. Really touching stuff. So I reached out, and here he is. And the other thing is he's still a student. He studied at Olafur Elliasen's Institute for Spacial Experiments, coolest name for an institute ever, and is finishing up at the Royal Academy here in Copenhagen. So he's just getting started, really. And since I'm not a betting man, you won't hear me say, mark my words, you'll be seeing more of him in the future. Nope, you won't hear that out of my mouth. But you know I'm thinking it. Enjoy.
When I started studying at Olafur's, we had at all our lectures, we always had a cameraman, if not two, filming every lecture, every talk, every critic, every presentation.
Wow.
And that took some time to get used to as well.
Oh, but that's because they're super archive.
Super archive. They just launched their archive, I think, actually a month ago. So everything is online right now. You can go in and look at all the lectures, all the talks and everything. So it's a huge online archive.
That's actually tremendous.
Yeah.
That they have that just available.
Yeah.
I wonder about education, if education's just going to become so available that you're not going to need to go. I mean, obviously those one-on-one moments with teachers are also important, but there's so much online learning you can do now.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I learned best from interacting with other people. And that
can't be replaced.
That can't be replaced in any way. Like in Copenhagen, there's not so much teaching going on.
I keep hearing that about the school here.
Yeah.
That there's very, very little actual classroom time.
That's kind of true. But I think there's a lot of offers, but you just have to kind of orientate yourself in the school to figure it out where and how. And it's not that you have to take the offers which are available, but that's really when it becomes, for me, it's not so much about the actual teaching which is going on there, but more about, like I said, the interactivity between the students. That's where you learn a lot.
Well, that's why this podcast exists in a lot of ways, is because I missed from school having those talks, being able to discuss kind of day in and day out about what you're working on, what other people are working on, what they're reading, what they're watching, what, you know, all that stuff related to art, because I think for some people it's easy to work alone, but for me, I need constant input. Something that takes me 6 months to figure out on my own can take me 2 hours if I'm talking to someone about it.
Yeah.
And that's what I missed the most about art school, was that, I don't want to call it a network because that's such a weird word, but just that space that you're in once you talk about art constantly.
Yeah. And that's also the good part about you getting a studio So you have kind of 10, 20 students on the same floor, even though you have your own little box where you're inside working, but you can always walk 1 minute and then you're in somebody else's box and can reflect and communicate and talk
about ideas.
Yeah.
Do you find that most of the students there are pretty active and pretty engaged and working hard?
I think it changes a lot. I remember for myself starting there being kind of thrown into this labyrinth of different, there's so many offers and still nobody tells you what to do.
Right,
and
it can be too open.
It can be really open in the beginning, but it's also an important step of learning, because if you don't learn to work on yourself in school, then you will never learn. Like going through art school 6 years, always somebody telling you what to do, and then finishing as an educated artist, and suddenly nobody is telling you what to do.
That kind of happened to me.
Yeah.
It took me a long time after school to pull it together and figure out how to be self-motivated. And I always thought that was something to do with age. But it could also be that I wasn't trained to think like that. Because we had set class hours. We had, 9 to 4 was a studio class, and you were there, you were working. And that isn't the case for you guys.
No, I even think it's a problem in art school. Definitely shouldn't be like that, but even in other schools, kind of kids nowadays, at least my feeling is they are getting taught always to look for like one answer. There's one right answer to every question in school.
Right.
And it's kind of, people are getting...
Right, and everything's a build-up to that answer.
Exactly.
There's less play.
Yeah, so you're always looking for the right answer instead of thinking for yourself, what could be the answer? You're always searching for the answer instead of making an answer.
That's really damaging to creative industries.
Yeah.
Because you have to fail in order to get somewhere in that case.
Exactly, to create something new at least. And I think this is really important, that, or at least that's how I find the freedom in art, to try to make new things which doesn't exist before, or just see the things we used to see or used to do in new ways. Yeah. This is where it gets interesting, where your heart gets beating and you feel alive.
Yeah. Was it always like that when you started becoming interested in art? Was it, did you start by making drawings and then moving on, or was it always kind of more exploratory?
The thing is, I went to a Waldorf school.
Wow, they have those here? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I went there 12 years.
Wow.
And of course, in Waldorf school, you do art, but it's always been really difficult for me being told what to do. So of course, we made drawings, we made paintings, we made things out of copper, wood, and so I knew a lot of things to do with my hands, but I always felt it was something I had to do, so I actually didn't see it as art. And then, yeah.
It's just another goddamn thing they made you do.
Yeah, kind of a way, this stupid teenage way of looking at the world. And then afterwards, I became interested in politics in a way, because I was frustrated of the system and how everything is put together. And I thought I would go into politics and change the world. And
what destroyed that dream?
Many different things. First of all, I realized after sitting at a school bench for 2 weeks that I couldn't do that.
Like a political position at the school?
No, but just going to school, just going to classical school, I can't sit down and think and read and listen.
Politics takes patience.
Yeah, and I need to use my hands. There's so many things I can do. I need to use my body, my hands, my feelings, my thoughts, and it's all connected. And politics seems like it's just the head talking all the time, making sense out of things which doesn't make sense. And it got kind of boring quite fast. And then, I just I went to one of these pre-art schools, a high school.
Okay, yeah.
Just to get away and do something completely different.
Was that like I want to use my hands so art makes sense kind of thing?
No, it was just like, let's just get away from everything and try something completely new. And I've always been somehow in contact with art since, like, nobody in my family is an artist, but close friends are artists, and yeah.
Well, isn't Waldorf also a fairly creative school program?
Yeah, like I said, yeah, I've got taught all these different ways of making things.
Right. I'm a Montessori kid myself. Is Waldorf the one where you have to use only natural product? No, that's Steiner.
Yeah, that's the same.
Is it the same?
Yeah.
Okay. Where you can only use toys made out of wood, or when they were younger.
Yeah, that's all these stories you hear when when you try to cook something down to just one sentence. But it's about much more. I think it's about seeing the human as a whole, which is not only a head that goes to school to learn, but it's also you make kind of dancing, you use your body in different ways, because
right, you engage
in many different ways. You draw, you learn skills about wood and other things.
Are you happy that you went to those schools?
Yeah, a lot. I think it was good to kind of open your mind, which is what it's about, going to school. Yeah, but yeah, then I started doing art myself, and that was kind of an experience. Did
it just immediately blast off for you? Were you thinking like, oh my God, this is great right away?
Yes and no. It was this, again, going to a pre-art school where you again get assignments each week. Somebody tells you
what to do.
And I was like, oh my God, what can I do? Like, I don't want to do what they tell me to do. And I was sitting in this room with all the other students trying to make a work of art. And we had 5 days to make it. And I was sitting there the first day, the second day, and like nothing really popped into my mind. And in the end, I was just getting kind of frustrated, and everybody else was producing stuff. So I walked out of the space, just took a long walk in nature. And then things just started popping into my head. And I kind of felt free.
Did you make that connection right away?
No, it was quite later, like 4 or 5 years later, when I kind of looked back at my practice and saw that somehow all my inspiration, all my thoughts about art always kind of relates to this free space which is around us. And again, like I was always kind of, I like art, but also I don't like it.
I think that's kind of actually one of the problems that most of us have.
Yeah.
There's nobody who's like, yeah, I think the whole system that we exist in as artists is just great. No. It's working great, and the only thing that I can, that makes me feel better about it is the fact that I can think of no system that is great. There's no, I know people who work in the nonprofit world. That's got its own set of issues. There's, God knows, banking, finance, politics. Anywhere you look, any sort of system has problems similar to the art one. But there's a lot of people who simply don't want to be artists because they don't like the system.
Yeah, but then that's when you focus on the part of the system which you like and try to make that stronger.
Well, that's life, right?
It's do what you like to do instead of spending all your time and energy criticizing maybe the things that you don't like.
Yeah, do what you like and leave the rest. Or even better, do what you like and change the rest, whatever. So, that's why I continue to work in this world. But there is a lot to take issue with in the art world. But it seems like you're pretty lucky in that the school that you go to is so open, considering how you have such a hard time with direct instruction and, boxes, I guess, essentially, confined spaces. But you're almost done, right?
Yeah, in June I will be finished.
What does July look like in your mind?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question.
A gaping black hole sucking all the light out of the universe?
No, not at all. But of course it's a big question, because also in Denmark you're really lucky, you get supported with money from the state, so you never have to think about making money out of your art.
That's right.
Which is a big liberty.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's coming closer now, and somehow I have to figure out how these two things get connected, or if they should at all, or if I should do something else and continue with my artistic practice, being completely free out of that world.
Mm. That is a tough one.
Yeah.
Because as a person who has a part-time job and a practice, it's a question of time.
Yeah.
You know, and that, for me, the goal is clearly to leave the job, because I don't have enough time to work on the practice. But that involves having to accept the rules of the game.
Yeah.
And that involves, I'm just starting to get into, I wouldn't say starting, but I'm getting better, more adept at the networking game. I'm getting better and more adept at talking to galleries.
Yeah.
How do you talk to galleries? How do you approach galleries? That whole thing.
Should they approach you?
Yeah. I mean, it's humiliating. It really is. And either you have to play that or you don't. I don't think you can count on being one of the few lucky geniuses where someone just comes to you and says, guess what? We want to put this on the wall and sell it for you.
Yeah. And I think like you, I spent 3 years abroad, almost 4. So basically most of my education I spent in Berlin. So I'm also right now trying to find my way in the Copenhagen art world.
That's probably why I didn't hear about you until recently, because you've been gone. Because I'm very much plugged in here and not so much elsewhere.
But yeah, a lot has happened actually over the last couple of months. Not so much exhibition-wise, but people start writing me emails, contacting me about different stuff, and that's a big turn, because usually every time you want to do something, I always been doing it myself from the starting idea to finishing project.
Yeah.
So it's a nice experience too.
Well, it could be. I mean, more than a few guests that we've had on the show here have simply been approached by someone, and it just kind of organically went from there.
Yeah.
So it is also possible. And of course, that would be nice, because then you can maybe seamlessly have your practice without interruption. Because I guess that's the goal, right?
That's the dream, yeah. That's my big dream, like getting a small country house with a huge garden and a big greenhouse and just walking around there doing my things. And then once a month, my gallerist would come for a visit and just like load his car with stuff that I made and then
leave you a suitcase full of cash.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the dream.
Do you live here in Copenhagen now?
Yes, I do.
How is it living in a city? I mean, I'm well aware that Copenhagen's not Los Angeles. It is pretty green and open as cities go.
Yeah.
But how is it for you?
It's okay. I often try to escape, and luckily my father's living on the countryside on a big farm, and I often go there. Actually, a lot of my works, they take place around his house.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the magazine, at the AF Art magazine I found you, there wasn't a single image, there wasn't a single document of your work that took place in any sort of urban center. Was there one?
No, there's not. Okay, that's because I'm thinking about the doors. But they choose the door which is placed in the harbor.
Yeah.
But the other 4 of them was placed in Copenhagen, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, they didn't choose that one.
No. Yeah. No, I really like to work with kind of natural surroundings.
Well, not only that, but it seems like it's more conducive to your thought process. You're freer.
Yeah.
In that space. Do you think of that as a disadvantage too? Does it ever occur to you that is holding you back sometimes?
No. No, it's like, I don't even know the word in English.
What is it in Danish?
Beanspin.
Oh.
Like a constraint or something.
Yeah, constraint, yeah.
Which is sometimes good to be creative. Mm-hmm. To have some constraints.
Setting limits. Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the big turning points in my work was setting constraints.
Yeah.
Because everything can be too free.
Yeah.
You know.
But yeah, then it gets interesting to look for the small parts of nature, or where nature and city meets, and what that situation kind of creates. Like with my studio, my first year at the academy, I just brought the nature in my studio.
That was that photograph in the magazine, right?
Yes,
the studio
exactly,
just full of plants and grass on the ground, and it actually looked very, very relaxing, like the kind of place I'd like to hang out.
Exactly. So I came into the academy and I didn't feel at home at all, and like I was missing going out and getting my inspiration. And so I thought, okay, why not just bring the inspiration into me instead of always having to go out?
Does it still look like that?
No, it was just for a couple of months. But there's a lot of plants, yeah.
So what is it? I mean, we keep beating around the bush, haha, pun intended, about plants, nature, outside life. Do you have any sort of thoughts about that, or is it simply you feel that is your space where you work best, where you're where it's easier to attain your higher self, or whatever you want to say?
Again, yeah, it can be looked upon in different ways. And I guess, like I said in the beginning, it just came from me walking in the outside surroundings, getting inspiration. But then afterwards, you start kind of thinking about, okay, why is that? Is it a parallel or kind of an answer or pole to what's going on in the world otherwise? And
exactly. Is it the reaction to something else?
Yeah. And I think for me, like I write in my my kind of bio poem, my how we call artist statement, that somehow looking for the origin of things also makes it possible to create a line from where you are now to the origin, and then you also get some direction pointing out in the future as soon as you have a line. But in this world, I think right now, we're always looking for like new solutions, new crazy things. And I don't think this is a bad thing. I think it's totally a good thing. As soon as you don't forget like the simple solutions, because they are everywhere around us. And like, if you just look forward, like you forget to look behind what is actually there. And there's so much to learn from just looking at the simple things, like the mechanisms which are going on every day, how the seasons change, how the weather change, and all this stuff. And sometimes I think people try to make everything way too complicated, forgetting that something is already there and this is what makes the world go around.
Well, that's a sign of it, anxiety, right? That everything becomes so convoluted and...
Yeah, it gets so complicated, and it's actually not so complicated.
So is it important to have direction? I mean, because that's the thing I noticed about what you said, is that you can look at the line behind you and then imagine the line forward.
That's a good question.
It's kind of a trick question, right?
Yeah.
Because both answers can be seen as positive or negative.
Yeah, but maybe, yeah. I think it's a good thing to have a direction, but also to be open to change it. Like, so it's not like a certain point where you want to go, but just be having some kind of goals, but being open for changing them.
Right. Well, I mean, that's why direction's a tricky word. I mean, because instead, I think what you mean is reference, something to look back on, not something to say, okay, we're going in this direction and that's it. The ship is sailing this way.
Yeah.
But how does that, so basically you've just naturally found your way into a space to work in.
Yeah.
Which is not even a space. It's the world, the open space. But are you forced to conceptualize that? Does the school make you write theory about this?
Actually, I think there's no written assignments at all in school.
Even to finish?
Yeah. I heard something about we might have to write like an A4 page.
Wow.
But actually you can go through school without writing a single word, yeah.
But isn't the school very theoretical and for lack of a better word, academic?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Huh.
There is a class called Theory and Formidling.
Development.
Yeah.
Huh.
But other than that, the other classes are quite free. Of course, we have professors coming in and talking about different things and lectures about art theory, history, and stuff. But again, you can choose if you want to take part in it or not.
Because I feel like there's a specific kind of... Oh, man, I'm in dangerous territory here. I feel like there is at least in my experience, the kind of work that comes out of the academy in the last couple of years has a specific kind of flavor which ties it together. And I guess maybe that has to do with the kind of people who get accepted in the first place. There isn't a graffiti artist at the Art Academy, as far as I know. And if there is, they're working in a different way than you might say. Like when I went to art school, it was all sorts of people. It was fucking stoners who just made ceramic pieces all day long. And then there was the highly conceptual, research-based, process-based artists. And then there was someone who just only worked in lithography. It was very wide.
Yeah.
And it seems like the school here isn't so wide in its.
No, it's quite curated.
What is it? What's that force that's curating it? Is it just the selection process, or is it the teachers, or?
It's actually a good question. I think I've never thought about it before. But yeah, one thing is probably also that the art world is so small, and I have the feeling that it's kind of, you have to fit into this box if you want to be a part of the art world, and that's already affecting the outcome of the school. Maybe people are doing something different, but they will, when they finish school, you will never see them again because they don't get into this little world.
That's right, because I work in framing, a very expensive industry. Only people who are going to show or have some sort of ability or funds to make it happen I'm never going to see them.
No.
It just strikes me as a mini art world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I guess a lot of arguments could be made that that's a good thing. That the mini art world should, that's what it should reflect, to prepare people for that.
Yeah. Not necessary. But again, there's more to the art world in Denmark. After spending, now 3 years in Berlin, I've seen a lot of interesting project spaces, people doing weird experiments, performances, and immaterial artworks and happenings and dinners, and it feels like there's a lot more happening, which is just around the art world, but it's not kind of really a part of it, but it's
in Berlin.
In Berlin, yeah. And now I'm also I just got back a little less than a year ago, and yeah, maybe it's also going on here, but I'm having difficulties finding.
Well, it's just such a smaller place,
Yeah.
And I think, I've been here for 8 years now, and it has changed significantly in those 8 years. There's a lot more artist-driven spaces.
Yeah.
That's really kind of the thing now.
Yeah, I noticed.
Yeah, and they're following their own plan, and it's not necessarily commercial based, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, that's where the Danish state is fantastic because they really can help support stuff like that.
Oh, that's really fantastic.
But it's always going to be a smaller city. And there's a lot of art for a city of this size. But it's not Berlin. It's not London. It's not Paris. It's not Milan. You know, it can't be. Do you want to go back to Berlin? Do you miss it?
Yes, I do. But there's also things about Copenhagen that I really, really enjoy. Like the bad thing about being a small city and like not the diversity isn't that big maybe. But on the other hand, it also makes you encounter with the same people more often to get into kind of deeper conversation, deeper relationships, and follow the kind of development of different things. And that I really enjoy, actually.
Yeah, totally. You're more plugged in.
You're more plugged in and you follow the same things develop. And that's actually quite nice that you can dig in deeper.
Well, I mean, that's the problem I have as an American. Everything that's terrible in the United States, okay, this is a broad statement, but everything that's, most of the things that are really bad in the US are really good here, at least comparatively. Politics, public transport, quality of life, you know, some sort of idea, at least moreover, of social justice, although I'm sure most Danes would argue with me on many levels on that, but just compared to the States. But everything that's bad here is great there. The food's better there. The nature's more interesting. There's more diversity, you know, all those sort of things. And it's just like, well, fuck, you get one or the other.
Yeah,
you know?
No, that's true. You can't have it all.
And that's probably the same with Berlin in here in some way.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know. It's also stupid of me sitting here talking about what is good and bad and not just like, I will just enjoy what is good here while I'm here, and then if I want something else, I will go there for a while.
Well, I guess that's more the thing. Like, if you can remain free to do as, you know, to go where the wind blows, then you'll have a lot of advantages.
Yeah, or you just try to bring, that was actually what I tried to tell myself. I will just bring Berlin to Copenhagen and try to be more weird. But,
well, I mean, I think there's definitely space for that.
Yeah.
And there's also some sort of system in place to help with that. But what do you think about the fact, I mean, so your work already seems very ill-suited for a gallery, for example. You're really beyond the walls in a lot of ways, right? Not just the art walls, but the walls, the studio walls, the institution walls.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the future of art? I mean, do you think that is where we're headed? This breakdown of the white cube? And
no, I think the white cube will always exist. Which is which is probably good, but it would be interesting to create another alternative as well. Mm-hmm. But I think especially this is why Denmark is a good place, because there is money and funding for doing things around the white cube. But in other countries where everything is privately funded, then it's more difficult to do things which is not sellable or fit for the white cube. Mm-hmm. So again, this is why Denmark is actually quite a good place to be working with things which are not in frames.
Yeah. Do you think about, you know, we were talking earlier about that line in history that you can look back at in order to reference the future. Do you think about that in terms of art history, in terms of what your work in a greater context?
No, I'm actually not really that good with art history, to be honest.
You don't have to be ashamed. I'm not either.
No.
Because you can spend your whole life doing that. For me, at least, you know,
yeah.
I don't have time to engage.
No, but I have really good friends who does that, and I then spend a lot of time talking with them, and then they tell me the important parts.
That's good. Yeah, you curate it that way. Well, I mean, you know, people's favorite thing to do is to go, "Oh, that's an interesting work you made. Have you seen the work of
so-and-so.
Yeah.
You know, like that's the number one thing people say, which is a statement of, oh yeah, I know what's going on. And B, oh, someone else kind of did that.
Yeah, it's quite typical, yes. But it's also interesting, of course, looking into if other people did similar stuff. Like I said, I was just in Venice and looking at Herman de Vries, this Dutch guy, I think 80 years old, living in north of Germany, having his own forest, basically exhibiting nature. And there's a lot of parallels to my work, which of course I have to know about. But as soon as you start digging into the similarities, that's where you discover the differences.
Right.
If you know what I mean.
Sure. And that could be useful.
So even like I saw he had like a big frame filled up with leaves. And this, first it made me kind of sad because I just did the same work. But then I saw that he just collected the leaves to kind of represent the leaves of nature. Whereabout I was standing from sunrise to sunset underneath a tree, catching all the leaves falling down. So my action is completely different, even if the outcome of them, if you put them next to each other, look kind of the same.
Right.
It's like two big frames full of leaves. But I was standing there catching each leaf when it fell down, like welcoming it or giving it a soft landing or whatever you would say, like being childish, running around underneath the tree a whole day, just catching leaves. So this is where you also discover actually more about your own work when you start comparing it with similar works.
That goes again back to limitations in a way. Not that it's a limitation to see that he made a work which was similar, but that it helps give you a wall to bounce off of, you know, or something, just some sort of context to place it in. Because we aren't an island after all.
No.
We do exist, you know, and like that's one of the greatest frustrations I have with curators and critics is the whole, like, we have to constantly place things in the context of the art canon and what's going on around us. And that I'm sure has a lot of advantages, but can be tremendously frustrating too. Because I guess there's constantly this desire for the big picture. When you're running around underneath a tree catching leaves, that's what that's about.
Yeah. Yeah, at least it's not a reference to art history in any kind of way. It's more just like I want to explore how a leaf falls down the tree, so I go out and I kind of see how it does it.
What about curiosity and play? I mean, is it how much is your work based around that?
A lot, I would say, maybe. Yeah. Like, I often see myself as not a scientist, because of course there's similarities, but not a scientist. But you know, the freedom in art that if you have a question, you can just make a kind of an experiment and try to figure it out your own way.
Right.
And this can just be weird thoughts, and that's what I love about it, that even though it seems weird, it's just as true as a scientific experiment. How would the beach look in the forest? How many leaves fall down a tree? I don't know, how does grass grow upside down? And like, just do it and find out for yourself. And of course you will not get a scientifically well-proven number that you can prove how the world is put together, but you will get a lot of other experiences, emotional, visually, aesthetic, small details that you kind of discover.
Totally.
And these are all the byproducts that this kind of fake experiment will be the result. So the real result is not the result, but it's the way there.
Right.
It's the things that happens on the way.
And so the art is kind of just a physical manifestation of that process of exploration.
Yeah. Yeah, I think art is a lot about exploring.
So for you, is art, being an artist in a way is almost a lifestyle? It enables you to live life in a manner in which you can spend an entire day catching leaves.
Yeah. Yeah, probably.
I mean, because that's in a way when I ask myself, what is it I want? I want the freedom to work on the things I'm interested in working on. I want just enough financial stability to remove that as a major factor of stress. And I happen to really like taking photographs and playing in the darkroom. So those two things can hopefully be melded in a way which allows me the optimum amount of time in life to explore and play with the things I want to play with. And if that's called art, then fine, so be it.
Yeah, making explorations, exploring yourself, exploring the world, and also having or getting experiences through these encounters that you can talk with other people about. I can learn something from reading it in a book, but I found out that I learn with my hands, with my whole body, by doing it, and then also talking with other people about it. And this just gets much more interesting when you do it yourself than always reading about other people doing stuff in the world.
Yeah.
And somehow not, I don't know if I'm contributing to anything. And it's probably also not so important, but at least I'm having fun, and
you can go crazy wondering if you are. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of desire to leave physical manifestations of the self or of your footprint on the world? Is that part of it?
I don't know. I both want to answer yes and no, because I have no idea what will happen as soon as I'm gone. And therefore, I also don't think it's important. I think in that way, it's much more important to put your feet down kind of hard while you're here, that you kind of stir things up, and that's where you feel something yourself and where you can communicate with other people about that. Mm-hmm. And that's what's make me feel alive. So that's probably what it's all about.
Is there any sort of spiritual or religious aspect to the whole thing?
No, I'm not spiritual in any way. Actually.
Not even in the greater nature sense that the universe is all one and we're all part of a greater natural order.
I don't think in a spiritual way, but from observing nature, from being in nature, you experience that everything is connected. And I don't mean in a spiritual way, I mean in a very practical way, like down to earth. Mm-hmm. Everything is connected in a natural way, and it doesn't have to become spiritual because it's just how it is. And everybody will see if they go for a walk in the forest in the spring and again in the fall, and they will see, everything is connected. There's some system going on, and we are all a part of it. It's not like there's nature and there's human. No, we are all one, and it's not a religious thing. It's kind of
right. Well, there's no need to force it into that context.
No.
It's just, I guess what I'm searching for is wondering what it is about openness. That's what I guess I'm understanding, is that it's not necessarily nature, but it's openness. It's a lack of walls. It's a lack of direction, both figurative and literal direction. No one's telling you what to do. You keep going back to this, and maybe it's related to your education and to this idea of being a whole human being.
Yeah.
And using all of your facilities in order to navigate life. Because as far as I can tell, one of the other reasons I want to work in the art world is I can't imagine the idea of a job in which I only use a few of my facilities 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. It seems like such a cramped way to go through life, to sit at the computer all day, for example.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I have no disrespect for anybody who does that. It's just I can't imagine not being able to be more physical with my body for so many hours of my life. And so I guess, what I keep going back to is like, what is it about this openness? Is it just the feeling of freedom, or is it?
Yes and no. Like, for myself, I think it's a lot about, like you say, the freedom, the exploration. Like, this is basically, if you're walking in the streets, you feel kind of in a cave. But I think also not just to talk about nature, but to talk about spaces which are outside the white cube in general. My first idea about making art, which is not only in the white cube, is that when we walk into a white cube, we are expecting also to encounter with an artwork. And this puts already a lot of prejudice, references and stuff into our mind. And I experienced that a lot of people going into museums, they have this, okay, it's art. It's okay if I don't understand it. Art is not to be understood. And I feel often if you put an artwork in a public space or in a forest, on a beach, wherever, which is not a white cube, then people actually encounter it with some kind of curiosity. There is something which is out of place, which is not as natural as it used to be, or there's just a small change made into it.
That's right.
Which makes you curious, which makes you want to go into it, which makes you want to understand it. And I think this is somehow, unfortunately, very often broken for most people in the white cube.
That's absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because if I'm biking through town and I see something that doesn't fit into my context of what town is, if I have the time, I'll stop and be like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And, and explore it. Whereas if I'm walking through a museum, I will stop at certain works, but again, it's art time.
Yeah.
When you go through the doors of a museum, it's art time. And that's the context. But what are we working towards then? Do you think a total breakdown of all institutions? I mean, I'm just talking about personally for you. Do you really just want to work in public? Is that no? Because
I've done works in white cubes, and I think it's an interesting space to work with as well. But I really try to remember myself that it's not the only space, and it has some restrictions, and I think it's very important to be aware of that.
Yeah. I guess each idea, each project, each experiment has its best context.
Yeah.
To be placed into, or at least to create more synergy, more dimensions.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't want to get rid of the institutions because they have a lot of good things as well. But I would just try to.
They have tremendous archives. Again.
I think it's important just to still be open to other places as well, and not thinking that the institutions is the only way that we can go to make art. And even I think I talked with a friend about it once, that maybe if we make enough art in the public space, then like we get used to looking at things with an open mind, because there's so many like small clues around the city, around the nature, which kind of could be a trigger for a new way of looking at things, that even if there suddenly is a big pile of trash, then you think maybe that could be art, because there's so much art in the public space that you then start to look at the pile of trash as if it would be art. And now art is this weird word, because I don't mean it's kind of restraining
blanket, right?
Yeah, but art as more as a potential of being curious.
So as a driver of critical thought. I don't mean critical thought like in the academic sense, but like to ask questions.
Exactly. So it'd be nice that to make that possible everywhere, to be more critical.
So what you're telling me is that come July or August, we can expect your first pile of trash piece here in Copenhagen.
No. I'm working with time.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm just
and it's
kidding.
gonna be a quite subtle White Cube show at Charlottenburg.
Oh yeah? That's not a bad place to show.
No.
Well, that's great. I mean, this I guess kind of my final question is how this relates back to your time in Berlin with Olafur, because he's one of those artists. My sister calls him a magician of art because he really is so good at balancing on that rope between inside and outside. And he's obviously working also with nature, especially more now, but physics, light, gravity, all that sort of stuff. But he's just so good at that balance between inside and outside. Gallery walls, public space, nature, city, etc., etc. Was that a big deal for you to work at his institute?
To study.
To study there.
It was really a big experience. His class was called the Institute for Spacial Experiments,
which is fucking awesome.
Which is quite nice, like an institute and then experiments, like to make everything into experiments while you're in school, which is again almost, maybe I got my reference from there with my scientific kind of research.
Well, it just seems perfect for you, right?
To make experiments, yeah. So yes, it was a really, really big experience to be there.
Was he actual part of the teaching? I mean, did you spend a lot of time with him?
Yes. He was not full-time, of course. He had two other teachers working with us.
He's a busy man.
Of course, he's busy, but he was there a lot, like more than I expected, actually, and also having one-to-one critics with him, going to Ethiopia for 3 months. Wow. He came visiting us 5 times while we were there. And I think his kind of ideas were brought good into the school. But my experience was that he was, this is kind of difficult to explain. But I guess when you become kind of a famous artist, you also somehow have a practice that you have to be true to. And this is kind of the catch about becoming famous in one way or another and a part of this art system, that you get locked in a way. Mm-hmm. So my feeling was also that he kind of also wanted to provide us with all the stuff that he couldn't do himself. So he was really kind of encouraging us to do performative work, to do immaterial work, to do happenings, to just walk in the street and explore the street. And I think he did it as well himself, but of course that's not the side of him that you see.
Right.
So in that way, of course.
But that's better than him trying to press you guys into being little hymns.
No. He was actually
those teachers who do that too.
Yeah, no, he didn't do that at all. He really was pushing us to explore and to explore the world, which I really liked. Also, a lot of the teachings that we had was not about art. We were doing kung fu. We were walking backwards for hours through the streets. We were talking with a dream interpreter. Yeah. And having a 3 days workshop about brain science and basically learning about the world.
Right. And interacting with the world.
Exactly. And this is how art school should be. Because
I agree. And in fact, that's how art should be, because art does become ghettoized in a lot of senses.
It's the big kind of danger of teaching artists about art history, that they kind of make work which is only referring to art history, and then it gets this very closed cycle just turning around itself, and then
feedback loop,
and it's not open for anybody to experience anything. And art should be a part of the world, not just about the world. It should be out in the world, interacting with people, bringing them in, bringing them out. And
I'm going to write that down. Part of the world.
Yeah.
Do you think things are getting better? Do you think art is becoming more part of the world?
Yeah, in many ways. I think
agree.
so. Yeah.
Things are changing. It's weird because the art world is becoming this two-tier system. At one time, we were facing probably the biggest art bubble ever. Or no, definitely in terms of money, the biggest art world bubble ever. And whether it'll pop or not, we don't know. But it's clearly a stock, an investment, a way to stash money, you know. But at the same time, it's also kind of on a whole different level, maybe more contained in the art world of artists, curators, art historians, outside of the commercial world. It's really, there's a lot of interesting experiments being done, a lot of interesting directions and attempts that are being, fielded, that people are trying some stuff, which I find very heartening.
Yeah. No, it's nice that the kind of concept of art is opening up, that everything can be art.
Yeah.
And we're going more and more in that direction, and that gives space for a lot of nice ways to.
Right.
To
it's not a new
it.
idea either. So it's nice that it is becoming more and more available in that sense. Do you imagine yourself in the future ever teaching?
Yes, I've done it a couple of times, even now, yeah. And I think it's a great experience. And I often think that the teacher is the one being taught the most.
That's the saying. You got to learn, but to master, you should teach. Something like that.
Yeah.
And it's funny. A couple of times I've thought about how you often talk about your relationship to people during this conversation, about how talking to people, experimenting with people, that stuff is very important, but you also like being out in nature. And I guess that's always going to be the fine line you have to walk, this desire to be around people and this desire to be alone, and be in the open. And that's just the way that is. Cool. Well, that's an hour. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
All right, friends. That was Rune Bosse. Take care out there in stabby Artland, okay? Shit's getting real now. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Undergang Armchair. The intro and outro music was kindly provided by Johnny Ripper, and today's interstitial music was provided by The Passion Hi-Fi. You can find links to their music and tons of other conversations with great people on our naturally pure website, undergang.net. The show is produced in part with the kind support of the Danish Arts Council and, of course, you, the listeners. As a holiday present to us over here at the Undergang, we'd love it if you'd tell another art lover about the show. Thank you for joining us. We'll holler again in 2 weeks' time.